So, have you guys seen discourse before about digital art versus traditional art? It's an old topic, and nowadays it's mostly died down. Or so I thought until Twitter, I refuse to call it X, it sounds so stupid, proved me wrong the way it often does with the stupidest of subjects anymore, and I have some really strong thoughts on it, so here we are yet again. First though, let's talk about the art. If you can hear outside real quick, just a side note, like trucks and stuff passing, we live close to the interstate, and unfortunately, the spot where I record, of course, it's really prominent right now, so that's annoying. But anyway, the piece you're seeing in the background of this video is the print for my December Mail Club. The theme for this month was holiday or festive. Now, I have always had a love for holiday time and lights, and I couldn't pass up a super cute print of the lovers for my concept Trace, Kier and Arlo, looking up at a pretty light display together. Sorry, I'm still a little bit sick. I'm way better than I was. So you might hear a little bit of throat clearing. But this print is available on my Patreon along with 3 stickers that are really cute little chibis holding Christmas light bulbs. Because I love them so much. The concept hit me and I couldn't not, honestly. And these are only going to be obtainable this month. I'm excited to offer this and the adorable stickers for my first ever mail club. And now that we've covered that though, let's get back on to our regularly scheduled video. So, I saw on Twitter, and I swear I've seen more of it since, a tweet bringing up the old traditional is better than digital discourse. Now I will bring up that both have their merits, frankly. But first off, this is something I genuinely thought had gone the way of the dinosaur. Of course, given that despite 6 movies saying why that is a bad idea, I really shouldn't be surprised to see that the former, the discourse topic, sort of absurdity also being revived. Honestly though, I thought we were past all this. I really did. The tweet in question, while I will not reveal who the tweet author was because I do not condone idiots who might try and attack others, I will tell the gist of what it said, and I'm not doing it word for word because I know people use that to find it anyway. They'll probably find it anyway, but long story short, you start being a jerk in the comments and trying to out people, yeah, that's not gonna fly. We don't do that here, okay? We use things like that here as a way to jump off and find topics and discuss them in a civilized manner. We don't attack people. But the start of this tweet, essentially, it was the start of a response of one of those, what are your controversial art takes posts. And boy, considering that they completely discounted digital art as a whole, honestly, they sure had a bad art take. They really did. According to this person, drawing digitally is actively harmful and hinders artistic growth and creativity. They cited being able to just toss out mistakes and hide your doodles and sketches to not have to face your mistakes, and that keeping a physical sketchbook makes you confront them. Now, I had a lot of problems with this. My simple response, that is the biggest crock of bull hockey nonsense I have ever heard. And now I am going to break down why I disagree so that we get the more complex response. First though, let me point out the pedantic bit for those who have seen the tweet in question. And like I said, again, I will not tolerate outing the person in the comments. Do not. But recognizing the pedantic bit, I do recognize that the original tweet said entirely digital mediums. But sorry not sorry, that's either them being exaggerative or setting up a shield so that they can pull the whole, well, I didn't say, if you use digital art at all. I said if you use only digital mediums, which I still think is a stupid take. Look, I genuinely get that vibe off of it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. However, even if that's not the take that the person has, I really don't think it's going to change my views or arguments in any way at all. Now, I do want to touch on the whole throwing away your mistakes junk. Last I checked, sorry not sorry, erasers are a thing that exist quite prominently in the real world, and are used to very permanently get rid of a mistake in a sketch. If you erase something on a digital canvas, you can hit undo and bring back that mistake, even if it was a mistake. Yeah, if you want to make that argument, I hope you're not using an eraser at all on your sketches or on your drawings, because you're completely erasing that mistake permanently. That's hiding things and throwing away your mistakes, isn't it? But being able to remove mistakes isn't something that just exists in digital media, and that really does frame it as such. And on a related note, I do want to bring up the hiding doodles and sketches to avoid your mistakes bit. Like, I'm sorry, I've done quite a bit of digital art in my time. I didn't fully start into digital until like my early to mid-20s. Just because I had a pad tablet, and I will get into a whole pad tablet versus screen tablet thing eventually. That'd actually be a good video topic, because you get some saying that one is superior over the other, and I've actually seen some people refer to screen tablets as cheating. But to give a good example, there are some people like myself who have to be able to look at the thing they are doing with their hand while they do it. Like, I know that you have some people who are like, well, if you practice. I practiced for 5 years with a pad tablet. I tried for 5 years with a pad tablet and never could get past that disconnect between my eye and hand. It was really bad. Another great example of it is when I typed out this whole entire script, I was looking at the keyboard while I typed. I've been taking typing classes and things like that since I was in elementary school. You would think by now that I'd be able to type, especially as much as I've typed throughout my life, without looking at the keyboard. But I can't. I cannot not look at the keyboard. I've been playing video games for years upon years, and I have to occasionally, even if I haven't switched systems in forever, and I've been using the same system, so the same button orientation, I have to glance down and see what button I need to hit to remind myself where that button is, just because there is a distinct disconnect between my eye and hand. And it's not a bad thing. But because of that, I had a pad tablet for 5 years that I constantly tried to use. But until I got a screen tablet in my, early mid-20s, I was about 23. Yeah, I was about 23, right at 23. Or no, I was right at about 24, I think, when I finally got it. Yeah. That I finally got a screen tablet. And that was when I really started doing digital. Until then, I only did traditional, really, aside from my very poorly done attempts digitally. But when I would ink a traditional sketch, and this was all just to explain that I have done a lot of traditional art, not just digital. When I would ink a traditional sketch, and I still do it occasionally, I have a sketchbook, I draw in it, and then I ink it. But when I ink them, I fix mistakes that I noticed as I went. Just like I do during the line art phase of my digital art. Just like somebody does if they use a light table in order to have a cleanly inked piece. They fix mistakes that they see in the sketch as they go if they don't have to just straight up resketch it. And I do the same in my digital art line art phase. However, one thing that I regularly did with my traditional art that I inked that I do not do with my digital art is erase the sketch completely. And that was it. It had a utilitarian kind of use to it. It was useful. There was a reason behind it. It was so that I could color on that page without dragging graphite smudges, especially because I preferred markers. I liked how they went down more than colored pencils. I enjoy colored pencils more now that I've learned how to use them a bit better. But at the same time, I still prefer markers. And even more than that, I prefer watercolor. But in order to avoid the graphite smudges, I would completely erase the sketch. The sketch is gone. The closest you have are any mistakes that remain in the inking phase. And those still exist in the line art phase of digital art. Whereas in digital, all I do is hide the sketch layer. If I want to look at the sketch, I can turn it back on. It's still intact. It can be revisited later. And I've done that. If I were to create the same piece traditionally, I cannot revisit the sketch. I can't go back and problem solve why the sketch looks better than the inks. Whereas digitally, I can and have gone back to figure that out. The sketch, if I've inked it directly over the sketch and erased the sketch, it's gone. Even if I ink it and I leave the sketch, guess what? I still can't look at what's there directly under the ink because the ink is more prominent. I can't just erase the ink and not get rid of the sketch. And I have actively gone back before to use the same sketch to figure out problems that I had in something digitally. Having a physical sketchbook doesn't quote-unquote force you to confront your mistakes. Speaking from experience, honestly, it is way too easy to set aside a sketchbook you've finished and just let it gather dust. Never flip through it again. I go through sometimes, and if I need reference pictures for a certain thing, I'll take pictures on my phone of it so that I have it with me without carrying a sketchbook. But most of the time, I have a ton of sketchbooks that I have just closed and set aside and never touched again, ever. I still have some that I had back when I was in high school, back when I started actually using a sketchbook, because I think through middle school I used lined paper. I did. I would draw comics in my notebooks. But I have a ton of sketchbooks that I just set aside and never touched again. Having a physical sketchbook doesn't mean you'll go back through it and look at your mistakes and problem solve it. Some people just prefer to just keep moving forward without doing that and problem solve as they go. Treating digital as a medium that equals no mistakes or doesn't allow you to learn from your mistakes is honestly a really flawed way to present it. A great example is that I have plenty of finished digital pieces. I still look back at them, and I find flaws. In one of my October pieces, I can easily look back and see a huge mistake in the size of the hands. And that's something I need to work on, keeping size consistent. Just because it's digital doesn't mean I just move on and never look at it again. Honestly, I'm way more likely to go back and look at my previous digital art. I have countless documents that I go back and look at just because I like to look over my sketch work. I regularly save versions of pictures that are just early stage doodles or thumbnails or sketches. I have pieces I'm no longer proud of, but that doesn't mean I delete them or never look at them. No, I keep them to study and figure out where I went wrong. I like it because I can go back and look at essentially just one folder and see all kinds of improvement and everything and study from my mistakes, just opening up one folder on my computer. Digital art has never ever stopped me from learning or creating. More often than not, digital art is something that has allowed me to do things I otherwise wouldn't have. And honestly, it's because of cost. Something I don't see a lot of people take into account in this whole debate is that digital art can be an important tool for those of more limited means. Is it more of an investment up front? Yeah, but you save up, you get that tablet, you get the things you need to do, you get like a Galaxy Tab or an iPad, and unless something happens to it, it's more of an investment up front, but you don't really have to constantly replenish unless something happens to it or it gets so out of date you need to upgrade, which can usually take a good while. It's a great alternative for those who can't afford expensive supplies more often. Not to say that you always have to use the most costly supplies, because that's really not the case. I have been one in more than one situation. I've been one to use just like a mechanical pencil that I got for really cheap at Walmart. Crayola colored pencils. Crayons. But if you find a medium you prefer and it happens to be a bit more costly but you like the feel of it, that becomes a repetitive investment. A great example is that I used markers a lot. I used markers, mostly Copics, because I liked Copics. I liked alcohol markers and the way they felt, and really the only good quality ones we had around here were Copics. You had Copics, and then you had the Hobby Lobby brand, because that's literally almost the only hobby store we have around here. And with that, it's just, those are costly. Especially if you live somewhere where the typical wage that you get, you can't replenish your stuff as often as you would like. And even if you're using cheaper supplies, like even Crayola colored pencils, that stuff adds up, because cheaper supplies, they wear out faster. They aren't as good a quality. You can't get as good pigmentation from them, so you have to use more of them, so you use them up faster. And even cheap supplies can add up and add up fast. I mentioned that I've done plenty of traditional art. I can't count the amount of money I went through on supplies. Sketch pads, paper, markers, pens, paint. Anything above convenience store quality can add up so fast. And then if you do get good supplies, like I got into watercolor. Thank you, Emily Artful, on that one. If you're interested at all in watercolor, I completely recommend her channel. She has some amazing pieces. They're so unique. And I really enjoy her like tips and tricks and her reviews on different watercolors and art supplies. Like I get the watercolors from Regina's Watercolor. I still really like doing watercolor. But I eventually got good watercolor paper and good paints. I still have them. I still use them because I enjoy that medium. But that said, when I first got my good watercolors and my good paper for it, I spent so long trying to build up the actual nerve to use them. Because especially if you've been in a situation where you could only afford more, quote unquote lower quality, I hate using that word, supplies, you get this feeling like, I don't want to use them, I'm afraid to. You don't want to waste the supplies that were so good and took so long to save up and have the spare money to get. And it can be maddening trying to get yourself up to the point of being able to do it. And then there's also the anxiety that comes with working on a traditional piece. Some people, especially if they have anxiety issues, just prefer to avoid that. It's turning out well, but to make it how you imagine it, you're going to have to try a new technique. And even if you practice it a lot on its own, you still get terrified that it's going to ruin the whole thing. Because so far, the piece is looking really good. So what if you screw it up? What if you do it wrong and ruin the whole thing? What if it doesn't turn out like you imagine? Then you've got to backtrack and try and fix things that it messed up. You've got to backtrack, and that's scary. That's scary for people. Before I started into digital, I can't count the number of pieces that I abandoned because of that. And it can be frustrating and upsetting. I have so many pieces from when I was in high school even, where I would have a big page of my sketchpad because back then I didn't really think about getting different paper or anything. I had a sketchpad with decent quality paper, so I would use it for my finished pieces. And I would actually have a whole page drawn and inked, and I really liked how it looks, but I was terrified to put color to it because I was convinced that I would just screw it up, that I would mess it up. Or when I first started getting Copics when I was in high school, I was afraid to use them because, what if I just waste them? These were so expensive. They were so expensive. What if I screw it up and I waste them on a piece that doesn't even look any good and I don't even want to show anybody? Look, I've heard and seen this whole debate over and over. People decry digital art as the easy way, when it's really just different tools. Different tools, different methods, different people. It's honestly just frustrating because my digital process is almost identical to my traditional process. I do a sketch, I do my inks or my line art, and then I do my color and my shading. I do my flats and my shading. The process is almost identical. The only difference is in digital, if I want to add a special effect, it's a lot easier without screwing everything up, because I can put it on a different layer and play with it until I get it right without ruining the whole daggone piece. And no matter how often I see or hear it, I have to say there are merits to both. It's really not an either or kind of thing. People learn in different ways. People create in different ways. I am so impressed by people who can do stuff strictly traditional and have the practice and the ability to do things without worrying so much about it screwing up the entire piece, or knowing that they can come back from it if it doesn't turn out how they like. That's why I practice painting, that I need to practice more, but that's why I practice painting. But I have a lot of trouble translating the skills one-to-one, other than sketching, inking, and coloring. But people learn in completely different ways, and they create differently. Some people prefer a physical sketchbook. I have several. I have a bunch. I have so many that aren't even full. I am a really bad person for getting a sketch pad, even though I have others that aren't full at home, because I get really weirdly particular about what goes in which sketchbook. I have to have a specific sketchbook. If I feel like it doesn't go in the sketchbook I have with me, then I just can't draw it. That's another reason why I personally get frustrated with physical mediums. And I think it has something to do with just my mental state and all of that. It's interesting. It's just a weird way that my brain works. But I prefer to do digital art, largely because I can work on my art almost anywhere without having to carry a ton of things with me. I can I have a Galaxy tab. I take that with me places and I doodle on that. If I'm in the waiting room at the doctor's office, I can doodle. I can show things to my therapist without having to carry like 5 sketchbooks with me if I want to show her things that might happen to be in 5 different sketchbooks. Or without having to make sure I remember before my appointment to open it and take pictures. And honestly, at this point, it's exhausting to watch people continue to argue about this. Creating is fluid. Creating is lovely. Creating is also different for everyone. That's one part of what makes art so beautiful and so wonderful. Restricting other people and trying to dictate how they create or learn because of your preferences really goes against that. Trying to decry one medium as bad just because it's not your preference, I still feel goes against that. So what do you guys think? Do you think everybody should chill out on the whole digital versus traditional stuff? Do you think both have merit, or do you find one superior? Really, all I ask is that you don't argue in the comments. Civil discussion only, because I will, like I said earlier, I'm not going to stand for people being jerks in the comments. We're going to be calm and have a civil discussion, okay? That's what we're doing, and that's what we're going to continue to do. But thank you guys so much for watching. I want to thank my patrons, Inside Chaos and Salmon. And again, real quick, if you want this print, it is up this month and only this month for my Patreon Mail Club. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!